Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. You can call me Kai and this is my crafty corner of the internet. This is my YouTube channel where I talk about all the crafty things that I've been up to. Most of it is cross stitch, but I will be getting into some sewing projects this time around too. And we're back with another flosstube update video. I'm going to try to keep this month's video a little bit shorter because today is July 1st, which means that Art Fight starts today. So I want to make sure I have time to sit down and draw some attacks once I'm done recording this video. But we'll talk about that later. For cross stitch today, I've got 4 different projects to show you. 2 whips that you're very familiar with, 2 new starts, and one of them's also a finish. So I know they said last month that I wasn't planning on starting anything, but things happen. So and then after that, we'll get into my sewing projects, and then we'll start talking about my plans for July. So let's just go ahead and jump right into my whips. So my first whip to show you, you've seen several times already. This is the Enchanted Ornament Stocking by Dimensions Gold Collection. Here is where I was at last time you guys saw it. I'm not keeping track of my stitch counts because I'm stitching this from the paper pattern, and I personally don't have the time to sit down and count all of that. But I started this on April 7th, and I'm stitching this with all the included kit materials, so all of the dimensions threads and the included 16 count light blue Aida. In June, I spent 11 days stitching, and this is where I'm at now. I know it doesn't immediately look like a whole lot of progress, but that's because most of it was done up here in the nameplate area. I've got all of this single strand half stitch and the French knots and back stitching, and then of course my name is all stitched in and back stitched as well. So I actually ended up recharting this whole area, mostly to help me with my lettering, because I cannot letter, like evenly spaced lettering on the fly. I have to have a grid for that, so I may as well rechart. So that was the majority of my stitching, and then I started getting into some of the green in the background. I'm finding it a little bit of a struggle to read this chart because while it's not... So Dimensions will often use like a handful of colors for their symbols. The chart itself is not technically a colored chart. It's just the symbols will sometimes have different colors. Like in this particular chart, they've got black symbols and then green symbols and then blue and pink, which is perfectly fine. I don't have any problems reading that, except for some reason they decided to do all of like the greens in the leaves and the fir branches and stuff are also green. So you have a lot of like green symbols stacked right next to each other, and so it's just taking me longer to parse the chart information, so it's taking me a little bit longer to stitch it. So I've decided that the only way that I'm going to be able to get through this background without ripping my hair out is to just go and do a color complete for this top half of the stocking. Mostly just focusing on the leaves and the branches in the background first, and then I'll do all of the single strand half stitch that you can see down here really well. There's a lot more of that back here, and then I'll move on to the first ornament bauble, and that should get me to the bottom half of the stocking. I didn't make as much progress as I was originally wanted to this month, but that's okay. I did still work on it, so, you know, all progress is good progress, right? Moving on to my next whip. This one is June Blooms by Heaven and Earth Designs, artwork by Margaret Morales. Here is where I was at last time you guys saw it. I'm stitching this 1/1 full cross on 25 count pre-gridded Lugana. Stitching the 90 colors version. In June, I stitched on this for a total of 18 days, and here's where I'm at now. I'm so excited. So I actually made a page finish. I'll have to check my notes again, but I think it was June 6th or something like that. I think is when I hit my page finish. I will put text up here to correct myself after I check my notes. I don't have it written down in this book. So yeah, I finished page 1 and am well into page 2. So I'm currently sitting at 10,973 stitches for a total of 5.28% complete. I stitched 4,679 stitches in June, which I am really excited about and pleased. Like, that is actually quite a bit of work for a little over half the month. There were many days where I did not stitch on this. And so the fact that I was able to get pretty close to what I stitched last month too, when I stitched for, more of the month, is actually like really exciting to me. So I'm just about ready to hit the right edge of page 2. I'll be working on that diagonal next. So like this square here is the rightmost edge of page 2. I will go ahead and fill all of that in, and then I'll move over to page 3. And then after that, I don't know what I'm going to do. If I'm going to jump down here to, I think this is page 7, and then do 7, 8, 9, and then move my hoop to catch the other 3 pages on this side, or the other 6 pages on this side. Or if I want to do page 3 and then move the hoop over to page 4 and then come back down here and catch. And work that way. Still trying to decide how I want to do that, but I have a lot of time to go yet before I have to make that decision, so I'll just keep going with what I'm doing. So yeah, I've made some really excellent progress on June blooms. The fact that I have hit almost 11,000 stitches in 3 months of stitching is kind of crazy to me. I didn't think I ever stitched that much, but clearly I do. And so it's really exciting to see those numbers grow. All right, now with my 2 whips out of the way, I did have a couple new starts in June. Last month I said I wasn't going to start anything because I didn't want to take stitchy time away from my other 2 projects because those are pretty big and I want to make sure I'm putting as many stitches on them a day that I can. But because they're so big, I can't really travel with them very well. I am trying to take a day, just an afternoon to myself where I can get out of the house, go down to the local coffee shop and do some crafting, and I can't really take either of those projects because they're really big. So I really was missing a nice portable travel stitch. So I had picked up a Dimensions Gold Collection Petite kit called Overlook Cafe. Picked that up last month, and I actually managed to have some time to start that. So here is where I'm at now. So I started this on June 6th, and this is strictly just for travel and for my coffee shop stitching. I am not stitching this at home at all. So so you will see very, very slow progress on it because it is basically like a special stitch to me. Again, stitching this with all of the included kit materials. So this is the included 18 count white Aida. I'm stitching with all of the dimensions threads. I've done 4 days of stitching on it. 2 of those were in a car, and then the other 2 were at the coffee shop. So, not much to say about that one. Yeah, I picked up this kit because I wanted something that was going to be detailed but small enough to travel with, so that way I had, something to keep me occupied at the coffee shop for a while. And it's turning out to be quite fun. The way I'm choosing to stitch this is I will pick a symbol. I picked the very first symbol in the chart in the top left corner, and I stitched all of those. I did cross country until I ran out of thread, and then I moved over to the next symbol that popped up, stitched cross country, all of that till I ran out of thread, and so on and so forth. And I think that's gonna be a really fun way for me to move about this piece, versus doing like my strict diagonals like I usually do with dimensions kits. That's new start number 1. And then new start number 2, again, totally didn't have plans to do this, but so I had a thought back at the start of June. I'm first and foremost a digital artist, and I have played around with like making pixel art like way back in the day, and since cross stitch is essentially the same thing as pixel art, you're like 1 pixel equals 1 stitch, right? You see a lot of that in modern cross stitch patterns nowadays. A lot of it does look like video game pixel art. Anyway, I had a thought of like, what if I could develop a watercolor pixel art style, like do pixel art but make it look like it was watercolor. I think that would make like such beautiful cross stitch patterns, and so I'm like really interested in trying to develop that. So I had that thought, and I had to do something with it. I couldn't just sit around for it. So I actually designed my own cross stitch pattern. Here it is, all stitched up. I'm calling this Citrus Splash. I challenged myself to only use the colors that I already had in stash. I wanted this to be like a super quick thing to see if this style was even like worth trying to pursue in cross stitch. And I think I'm getting close, but I really need to work on my color choices because, and it's washing out even more on camera, but there's actually like 2 or 3 different colors in this part of the lemon here, and the beiges, like there are multiple colors. I used 13 thread colors in this, but it doesn't look that way, and so I just need to work on refining my stitching palettes so that it matches what I draw on the computer. But it was a lot of fun to stitch this up. I started this June 14th and I finished it June 20th. I stitched this one on 16 count Aida. Like I said, it has has used 13 colors and 1 blend, and is 44 by 44 stitches. So it had a total of 1,367 stitches. I'd say it's not bad for a first attempt at this style. This is not the first cross stitch pattern I've designed, because I did do a lot of self-designed cross stitch attacks last July for Art Fight. But I think this is the first time I've ever tried to do something like very stylistic in cross stitch. So I think it's worth revisiting. Like I said, I just wanted to try to do something with that thought. Otherwise, I was just gonna, because it was running around my head like a hamster wheel, and I had to do something with it to get it out. So just a very small little thing I stitched up basically at the kitchen table while my toddler was eating. So it didn't take from my other stitching time, so it still was okay for me to do. It's justified. There we go. So yep, so that's my second start and finish. I'm not sure if I'm going to fully finish it or not. I had plans to frame it in a little round plastic, those fake wood rubber hoops. But I forgot when I was designing it that that my hoop is a circle, and so there were going to be points outside, like in the corners, that would be cut off. And sure enough, it ended up being too big for my hoop, even though I tried to design it to fit in the hoop. Oh well. So that's it for the cross stitch stuff. And now for other stitchy business. I actually did quite a bit of sewing in June, and I actually sewed the shirt that I'm wearing today. It's my first time sewing with knits, so I know like I have some mistakes, like up here in the collar's a little, the neckband is a little twisted. I definitely accidentally sewed the neckband inside out. Like I attached it to the wrong side of the shirt first instead of the right side like you were supposed to. So that's why it looks a little funny. But I used New Look 6556 for the pattern. I did view A, left it unhemmed at the bottom, but I did hem the sleeves. I sewed it all on my domestic home sewing machine. I don't have a serger, so I just did it all with a straight stretch stitch. And the fabric itself is like a rayon that I got from a mystery box from bohofabrics.com. I don't know anything else about the fabric other than it's a rayon. So it could be like a rayon jersey, or it could be rayon viscose, I don't know. And frankly, I'm still learning like the fabric terminology, so yeah, I really don't know anything else about the fabric other than it's gray and made from rayon. That's it. But I want to start sewing quite a bit more of my own clothes. It's just going to be a slow process, as you know, I'm trying to balance everything else that I want to do, but I'd like to try to make one article of clothing for myself every month, excluding July because I'm already doing Art Fight as well. But for a first t-shirt, I don't think this is too bad. I'm actually quite proud of myself for that. In other sewing news, I started quilting. I'm working on 2 different quilt projects at the moment. Yeah, working on 2 different quilts at the moment, one for myself, and then one for my toddler. So the one for myself, I'm calling my Under the Stars blanket. I found this crochet blanket pattern on Pinterest. This is the Starlight blanket by the Burrow UK on Etsy. Now, I don't crochet, but I did fall in love with the colors of this blanket, and I was like, I want that very much for myself. And since it's just hexagons, that translates so well into English paper piecing. So I started thinking about this last year, and then while I was thinking about that, I came across a video by I can't remember her exact YouTube name, but like Sew Vintage Emma or something like that. Emma Vintage Sewing. It'll be linked in the description, where she talked about her quilt as you go English paper piecing quilts, and I thought that would make like the perfect project to do with this blanket. So that was a very long-winded way of saying that I am doing a quilt as you go English paper piecing quilt. And it's star themed and celestial, and I've got everything mapped out. I'm going to use, I think I counted out, it was like 9 or 10 different colors of the quilt top, and then another type of color of fabric for the backing. Now I'm gonna do that beautiful ombre gradient. I don't have my topper fabric yet, but what I did do is I cut out all of my batting, all of my hexagons for my batting. This is just leftover flannels. I had a bunch of like little chunks of flannel fabric from when I made my rag quilts for college. Those were just squares of flannel fabric. I had a purple for the back, the white for the batting, and then printed flannel for the topper, right? And then you just sew them all up with leaving the raw edges like on top and opens, and then you like fray them a little bit so it gets all fuzzy. So I had like a ton of flannel scraps that were too small to do anything else with, but the perfect size to make 127 hexagons. Which makes me really happy because that got all of that all of that extra scrap fabric out of my stash. So I'm very pleased with like how thrifty I was about that. So currently all I have are 127 hexagon batting hexies cut. And I'm keeping it all in this little tote here, which lives in a shelving unit right under my window, so I can just grab the whole thing. And my plan is to take this downstairs and stitch it on the couch while I'm just hanging out with my spouse. We try to not do like our main hobbies on the weekends so we can play video games together. So anyway, my plan is to keep everything I need in that tote and then pull it out like on Saturdays and just do a little bit of stitching on the couch. So that's why I thought, like a quilt as you go, English paper pieced quilt would be perfect because I could literally just do all of that on the couch. Don't have to be up here. It would be like the perfect no-brain craft, basically. That's just for fun. I'm not putting any like time constraints on it. I have the backing fabric bought, but I still need to buy my topper fabric. And I need to mark and cut out my backing hexies. And then obviously when I get my topper fabric, I'll have to do the same for that. Some of the hexies will also be embroidered, but I'll talk more about that when it gets there. Just wanted to bring up the fact that I started cutting fabric for it. My next quilting project is actually my first true quilt. So like I said before, I had made a couple rag quilts in college, but they didn't actually require any quilting. But my toddler is going to turn 2 years old in September, and we figured that next January would be the right time to transition her out of her crib and into her big kid bed, which is a really big milestone. So I want to make her quilt for her big kid bed. And I chose this quilt pattern. This is the Pumpkin Farm quilt by Fig Tree & Co. And it is absolutely perfect for her because she's our pumpkin. Her birthday's in September, and the very first outfit that we dressed her in was covered in pumpkins. So that's kind of become her nickname. And then, her first birthday theme was one cute pumpkin. So she's our pumpkin. I'm making the small cream version here. And I have started cutting fabric on that as well. I've actually got all of the strips cut out, and I'm starting to cut the individual block pieces. And then to also keep myself organized, because this is probably going to be a start and stop kind of thing, because I can really only sew at my machine Saturday afternoons, and there's a lot of things that I need to do. Like, there's so many things that I want to do up here, and I can only do them Saturday afternoons, basically. So there's a lot of other things that I want to do besides just quilting. So because I anticipate that being a problem, I made block bags. So this is just my stack of Ziploc bags. Each bag is going to represent one block. I have it labeled, and then inside I've got each block piece labeled with the what pattern number or what pattern piece it is. The orange is done. I'm 2 of 5 green prints in, and then I've got 2 charcoal prints, 6 ivory prints, technically 7, including the background. Yeah, so that's what I've got started so far on my quilting. Again, it's also stored in this tote, so that way I can take the tote downstairs and cut out all of the pieces while my spouse plays Skyrim or whatever he wants to do. And then, so that's everything that I did in June. Now, looking ahead to July, it's Art Fight. If you don't know what Art Fight is, it's an online art gifting game where, users who sign up will get sorted onto one of 2 teams, and then you earn points for your team by making art of other people's characters. There's a lot of like digital art focus, but they do also have a crafting category, and you can do things like beadwork, embroidery, clay sculptures, cosplay, all that kind of stuff. Last year I did 5 cross-stitch attacks, and I designed them myself because that's obviously the whole point of Art Fight. And while I have a few plans for a few different cross stitches, but I think ultimately what I want to do is I really want to develop that watercolor pixel style I was talking about earlier. So I think that's going to be the majority of my attacks, but I do have at least 3 different people picked out to do cross stitches for. I don't know if all 3 of them will also be watercolor pixels, or if they'll all just choose to do something a little bit easier and do like a regular pixel style for them. Otherwise, I'll be digitally drawing my attacks. I have a goal to do at least 6. 10 attacks would be better, but 11 attacks would be absolutely ideal. Currently, I'm sitting at like 89 attacks total across my entire time on Art Fight, so if I did 11, that means I'd hit 100 attacks this year, and that would be kind of cool. So I think I'd like to do that, but 6 minimum, because, we've got a zoo trip, or we've got a trip planned to see some family for a week, and then go to the zoo with our toddler, and then of course, I have a toddler, so I'm going to be limited in my Art Fight time. My plan is to do Art Fight over naps, because we're lucky enough to get a 2-hour nap in the middle of the day. So I will have 2 hours to do Art Fight, and then in the evenings I'll stitch on my 2 big whips. So my plan will be to do pick one project and work on that for a week, and then the next week I'll do the other project, just because I've been noticing that like when I swap back and forth between the projects, because in June I was doing like one project over nap and then the other project at night. It was really hard to get my brain back into the gear of like, okay, this is what these symbols mean, and here's how I'm stitching this one versus the symbols on this project, and all of that. So yeah, that's it for my plans. Like I said, main goals will be to do at least 6 attacks, hopefully 11 for Art Fight. A few of those will be cross stitches, and I'll be sure to show those when I have those done. And then sewing wise, I want to finish cutting out the pieces for the pumpkin farm quilt. For Under the Stars blanket, I think I'll just focus on cutting out the backing hexagons, and then I think that's all I want to do sewing wise. I have a list somewhere, but those are my main sewing projects at the moment. And then, yeah, just stitch June blooms and enchanted ornaments. I'd really love to try to get enchanted ornaments done because I think that would be like a huge relief. I'm not going to get it all the way finished in July, I know that, but I need to do a lot of work on that because I really want it done. I really don't want to work on it any longer than I have to. So, yep, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a lovely day. Please take the time to be kind to yourself today and do something that you enjoy. And I will see you guys next time. Bye friends, happy stitching!